Welcome to Cubicle Talks. This is Jada, writer, content editor, and your host. Cubicle Talks are a series where we get to have a warm cup of coffee and chat with the most successful people in their unique fields of businesses. In this series, these incredible people share their jaw-breaking expertise with us, and we bring them to you for your success. So grab yourself a warm cup of coffee or tea, and let's begin. Today, we have scored you an interview with Harvard Business Review's very own former chairman of Project Management Institute, Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez. I have been looking forward to this, not gonna lie. Even though Antonio recently published his Project Management Handbook with Harvard Business Review, his myriad of achievements is internationally recognized, and he's one of the most respected experts of project management today. He has created the concepts of hierarchy of purpose and project economy. His research and transformational approach on projects are globally acknowledged and prestigiously awarded by Thinkers 50. So without further ado, let's welcome Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez. Hello, Antonio.
Hello, Jada. Nice to be here in your show and
Lovely
Cubicle
to see
Talk.
you.
Nice
Lovely
to see
have
you.
Thank you so much. We're happy to have you here. So, Antonio, if I may, I'd like to start with the project management primitives. Now, I know you have received tons of questions that ask you what project management is. Today, I'd like to make a difference and ask you, what isn't project management? What are the most common misunderstandings you see happen in this area?
I like to escalate a bit the topic of project management. We've seen it for many years, decades, as something very tactical, and then you have found this kind of conflict or battle with Agile. The way I look at projects and project management is anything that has to do with change, with converting innovation into reality. That's projects. And then you can have different tools to use them. One of them is waterfall project management, others Agile. So for me, project is everything that has to deal with change, introduction, innovation, introduction of new techniques and tools and services. So that's where I like to position projects. It's so important and everybody needs that.
Fantastic. So what is your story about project management? What got you into and kept you in project management?
Well, I just jump into projects by chance, I think, like most of us. Not like we were studying careers to become project managers. I joined a consulting firm, and the first thing that you do in consulting firms is to start doing projects. And I love that. I love the idea of starting new things, trying to help customers to get better. And then I realized that most of the projects I was involved in, the company was struggling, were late and were a mess. So I started to research why the projects are always late and difficult to carry out. And then I also thought, well, if a project is difficult to do, then how can companies do 500 projects? And so it's just my curiosity. And then, of course, field work, where I really learn all the basics and the foundations. And I thought, wow, there's this an area where it has not been completely exploited, that there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of failure. So that kind of triggered my passion. And then it has just evolved. I think we need projects to solve any social world problems like sustainability. So I'm strongly a big believer that we have the solution for big problems, but we are not on the table for discuss them.
That's so true. So about, the increasing number of projects, I'd like to ask you, why is project management growing exponentially today? Why are we seeing a gradual increase in the number of project managers? Why are there so many projects? Why do we need projects?
Yeah, good question, Jada. It's to the point that you see now companies that have more projects than employees, because we like to start projects. I think that's natural human beings. We're excited about starting new things there, and then we're not so good at finish them or closing them, so they go on forever. And I think this is something that has accelerated in the last 5 years because of two main reasons. First, the world is going much faster, right? The products don't last very long. In the past, you could have a product that would last 10 years, now maybe 10 months, because the competition will replicate it, make it cheaper. So the products, the services life cycle are shorter. And then the second is that a lot of the operational work is being moved into artificial intelligence robots. So many people are shifting from operational jobs to project-based work, agile teams, and self-managed teams. So that's why we see so many projects. That's what I call the project economy. And that, I think that's just going to increase.
Exactly. So about your first point, you have mentioned the length of projects and how competitive the market currently is. So about that, I have a question for you about time management precisely. How do we do it right in project management? How do we manage our time effectively in projects and not have a fallback in the market with our projects? How do we keep up?
I think that's where Agile, it's a very good tool, especially the sprints. I like having sprints in my projects, and because sprints makes you prioritize. So what are the priorities for the project? It focuses everybody in the project to say, okay, for the next 3 weeks, that's what we're going to be working on, and we have a milestone that we need to meet. So sprints with short deadlines, it's a great way to manage your time. If not, then you let people to make their own choices and the projects tend to disperse. So just a simple technique, use sprints, maybe not in the most agile term, but do them every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, have sprints on your project, key phases or key milestones. And that by nature will help you and the team to prioritize. If you don't do that, then time management is almost impossible.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So about that again, do you think most projects fail due to poor time management? How can projects get more efficient? Besides the milestones, what should the project managers avoid? What are some mistakes in this field?
Yeah, obviously, it's something that I address. I have a LinkedIn newsletter weekly, and I cover some of these topics. And one of the most difficult one was why success rate in projects has not grown. Why success or project failure is still 70%, up to 80% in digital transformation. So I think there is a need to understand why project fails. Time management, yes, we're not good at estimated. Celia, we tend to be quite optimistic, yeah, right? For sure, we'll make it by the end of the year, but then once you realize the work and understand the details, that will never happen. But I think there's 3 big areas that I like to group the biggest challenges. One of them is senior leaders. So senior leaders are the ones who often prioritize and select which projects we do, and they're really bad at that. They don't see the consequences. They think that capacity is unlimited. So so senior leaders do very poorly the prioritization and selection. Senior leaders don't have a clue about how to sponsor projects. They don't know the fundamentals. They don't know the fundamentals of Agile. So this is about 30 to 40% of the reasons for project failure is the senior executives. That's why I was very keen in publishing the book of HBR, because they do focus on those people that we need to convince to do projects better. Second big area, Celia, is organizations, the way their culture, structure, compensations. Again, terrible. If you're a startup, that's okay. You start very lean, very agile, very lean startup. There are no silos, there are no hierarchies. But if you're an established company who needs to accelerate, to become faster in the delivering projects and products and services, your old structure, the hierarchy, the command and control culture, the rewarding, the job descriptions that are not relevant today, just make you slow down everything. Organizations where you have people working in your projects 10% of their time, and then 20%, and some other team members will work 1 day per week, others 3 days per week. That's a disaster. So I think this, the organization, the way the company is organized, is the second big reason for failure. And the third one is project management and the project managers. I think the methodologies have not evolved very fast. Sorry, in project management. That's why Agile became so popular. We've seen that Agile brings a lot of benefits, but still doesn't deliver successful projects. 80% of digital transformations fail. And I think what I'm proposing in the book, in my new concepts, is we need to build a tool set. We need Agile, great, and Scrum and Scale. And but we also need project management and program management and lean startup and design thinking and change management products. So I think there has been a misuse, or we've not been able to provide the right tools for delivering projects. And in that space, the last part is the role of the project manager. I think the role of the project manager has been a very limited, and I think we need to step up. So it's not about delivering just the project on time and on budget and on scope, but is, and more important, delivering the benefits. And that's something that we were not really responsible for, and I'm claiming we should.
Exactly. So before I get to the next questions, for our uninformed audience and readers, could you explain what Agile is?
Sure, Agile is another way to manage project in a shorter, in a much more smaller way. Basically, you will develop your scope, which is called more user stories. And the team is a very compact team, all sitting together. And what they do in Agile is that you pick just one topic, one feature, maybe the homepage that you want to build, or a module within the app, and then you just focus on that one, because we call it sprints. And in the sprint, usually about 2 weeks, everybody works on that feature. So in 2 weeks, you have already something to show to your clients. And so it's much more fast. It's very iterative, so you get constant feedback. Traditional project management, you'll get the feedback towards the end after 9-12 months. Here it happens every 2 weeks. So it's something that is very successful. It has been widely used in telecoms and IT, Silicon Valley. And what I'm saying is that it's great, but we need to have all the tools, not just that one.
So about the project's success, you talk about ownership in your articles and your interviews. Can we say that a project has a single owner, that being the Agile team or the traditional team, or stakeholders or senior project leader? Is this possible?
Well, Celia, a great question, and one of the most difficult questions always, Jada, because there's a lot of confusion. Methodologies tend to say, well, the project manager delivers the deliverables, but the owner of the project is the executive sponsor. And the same for Agiles. There's always somebody above the projects, whether it's Agile or traditional, that it's accountable, it's the owner. And I think that has led to a lot of misunderstanding, because like I was telling you before, senior leaders don't have a clue. They don't know what the projects are and how they work. And so I'm saying that going forward, the project leaders should be held accountable for delivering the benefits. What's the point of developing a new app if nobody uses it? What's the point of creating a new company if nobody buys their services, right? What's the point of creating a building or a hospital that nobody goes? And why should the project manager not be accountable for the results? So I think to solve that problem, I would say, let's say project leaders are accountable. Sometimes you'll have the sponsor, and maybe it can be done in partnership, but I hate, and I think a big reason for project failure was that gap between nobody knows who needs to deliver the benefits. We know who delivers the project, and we need to solve that. So definitely, Jada, for me, project leaders should take ownership of their projects.
But do you think, isn't it important that the project leader also make the team embrace the projects entirely, so that they feel committed to it? Because we experience in the workplace that if there's no connection, whether if it's personal or a more, something they believed in, a value-based or a purpose-based goal in the project, it's hard to keep the team members committed and functioning in the project. So in this
Absolutely.
regard, I'd like to ask you, how should a senior leader not approach a project within this regard with their team?
Well, it's a good question again. I think what the project leader should do at the beginning of the project is ensure that the senior leader understands and is engaged. There's, of course, the team needs to be engaged, and that's the responsibility of the project leader. But even more important, the senior leader needs to be engaged. Don't start a project if your senior leader is not engaged, especially if it's a big one with many departments or business units. Don't start it because it's going to be failure, chaos. So what I tell when I teach organizations and project managers, I said, listen, that's the first step. Even before looking at the project, the business case, make sure that that senior leader has made time for your project, understands their role. And if you don't have that, it's just 100% disaster. And then the team, of course, I think if they see a strong project leader that can communicate and empower the team, like you say, I think the number 2 step in this project is create a high-performing team. A high-performing team is where everybody feels that they have a place to contribute in the project, that they're recognized. And I think that's super important. Even more important than a detailed plan is focusing on creating that team. And so, yes, I agree. But yeah, make sure that that senior leader is 100%. Maybe you're lucky and it happens and it's done and the senior leader understands and is committed, but 90% of the cases is not.
It's quite ironic, actually, considering they're the senior leader and they're supposed to coach you and guide you in this journey. Instead,
Yes.
yeah, you turn out to, try to convince them and try get them help you or assist you in your projects. So I'd like to talk about your approach, less is more in project management. Could you talk about that, please?
Yes, and I think we mentioned that the companies have more projects than people.
True.
And I think what has been clearly comes across research is that when you have less projects and you're able to dedicate time and put the right resources and senior leadership, and that makes projects accelerate. And I'm going to give you a very clear example, Gina. When the pandemic started, we experienced that less is more. Companies had to react very, very fast to overcome the crisis, to address new realities where employees were no longer at the office and they were working remotely. And so what happened during those weeks was extreme prioritization. Companies close maybe 80–90% of their projects. They say, okay, that's not, stop. This one is the one we need, which is becoming more digital, more virtual. I know the space of education and business schools, and they were talking for 10 years of developing online courses. They never did that. They did that in 10 days. Why? Because extreme prioritization, less is more, everything into 1 or 2 big bets. And I think I'm afraid that organizations are losing that again. They're launching too many initiatives, there's lack of resources and focus and so on. So that's why especially when I talk to senior leaders, I really enforce that credo of less is more. And you've done that, people, you've done that, senior leaders. You did that very well. So do it again. What is the number 1 and 2 priorities in your organization? What are the top projects? Be involved in them, get the best people there, and you'll see how you can accelerate delivery and creation of value. So yeah, I think this is something really, really important.
I agree. So do you think organizations then still use applications from traditional project management in this regard? And do you think will it take us to future? Like, can we go on like this? Will it bring us success in project management?
I think organizations need to use project management, but to one of them, my first comment, Jada, was, yeah, but project management should be seen as any type of change that you're carrying out in your organization. And there's different type of projects. In my book, I'll talk about 3 type of projects. One of them are efficiency projects. So it's mostly around doing your operations better, leaner, more automation. You have sustaining projects, which is expansion of your current products. For example, if you have an iPhone 10 and you make the iPhone 12, that's a sustaining project. And then you have transformational projects, which is completely bold ideas, radical ideas that you are kind of exploring. And so, depending on what type of projects, the level of uncertainty and complexity, you should be using different tools. And I can tell you, I've been wrong many times for when I was a bit younger implementing project management methodologies. I thought you could use one methodology for all type of projects, and that's wrong. We need to have all these tool sets. So I think, yes, companies need to have project methodologies. I call them maybe project implementation or change implementation or transformation, but they need to build agile. They need to build waterfall. They need to build design thinking. Many projects, what I do in companies, when I see, well, you have 1,000 projects, how can you manage that? I say, I'm sure 80% of those you can do without projects. You can't just do them on operational activities, continuous improvement, and suddenly you clear a bit the landscape, and now you have 200 projects to prioritize or 20 projects, and that's much easier. So I think continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma is also very important to have. So yes, we need that, but we need to upgrade.
That's true. So you're saying that we should embrace an eclectic mixed sort of approach in this.
Exactly.
Before I move on to the evolution of project management and what is expecting us in the future in the area of project management, I'd like to ask you, what is the difference between operations and projects? Like, if we're talking about an operational goal, how does that differ from a project's goal? What is the difference?
Operations is your daily kind of running of your organization. Like maybe if you're in production, producing goods or producing printer, if you're in the printing or producing food. So that's your day-to-day activities. For example, if you look at an airport, flying the planes, that they go on schedule, that their stuff that they're sold, the tickets, that's your operation. If you want to create a new terminal, that's a project. So operation is really running the daily activities. And so far over the last 100 years, 80 years, that has been the focus of most of management concepts, hierarchies and culture, command and control, and deep specialization. You had to be in one role, operations for 25 years, or finance or marketing and sales. So that's operations.
Fantastic. Thank you for explaining that to our audience. So I'd like to talk about evolution of project management, which is totally exciting. As you said, we have experienced the changes we could never even think about with the pandemic and with the virus. So how would you describe the role or roles of a project manager in 2022?
Well, I think project management, I talk about this concept, the project economy, which we already covered, is that project-based work becoming primary in around organizations and everywhere. It's a bit like the gig economy, but within companies, right? And everybody working project-based temporary activities. But that window of opportunity, if project managers don't step up, if project management methods don't get upgraded, if we don't start embracing technology like artificial intelligence for our projects and project management office, there is a big group of people who are coming into this space, the managers who are moving out of operations to project-based way. So they might take over. So I think project management in 2002 is completely a reinvention year. We need to reinvent and we need to deliver. So we need to, for example, I always say, what if we double our success rate? Instead of 30%, we go to 60%. Why don't we start next year? So we need to reinvent the profession. We need to introduce all these new concepts, but also deliver. We cannot keep failing. So it's a crucial year because people are watching us. And if we don't deliver, say, well, yes, we continue with 30% success rate. That's terrible.
Exactly. So we've talked about this eclectic approach, the mixture, but I'd like to ask you a more broad question. How do you think project management is going to evolve? Like we're talking about basically a mixture of tool sets. We're saying that we should say have agile and some traditional methods. So, but how will these carry us in an ever transformational industry where everything changes in the blink of an eye? What is going to change, and are there things that will stay the same? Do you think we're going to embrace, or will we have to embrace the same approach 10 years later, say?
No, I think there's, according to my prediction, 80% of the things that we do today will change. So that's a lot. There will be, I think, a shift towards knowing new concepts in project management, playing a role in innovation at the beginning of the project, a big focus on benefits, but also introduction of artificial intelligence and new technologies. Today, we're still managing projects with Excel sheets and MS Project and some PPM tools, but they are not embracing artificial intelligence, and we still need to chase people to get our reports, and we get data 2 weeks later, and this is not real. That, I think, so yes, there's a lot of change coming. I think it's all good, but we need to really see project management different. We need to build new skills. We need to become leaders, true leaders, instead of managers. So I see it just super exciting. Just we need to do this fast.
Yeah. So you're saying that we are going to embrace an approach based on leadership instead of management.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing that happen.
Yeah.
So in your IdeaCast interview with Harvard Business Review, you talk about a shift from operations to project-based work. So we have talked about the difference, but following up on that, I'd like to ask you, what do you think is going to change again in the next 10 years of organizational environment structure resulting from this shift?
Well, it's a good question. It was a great interview with HBR. The senior editor, Alison, told me, listen, Antonio, when I came to this interview, I thought it was super boring, project management. But then she realized that actually the points that I was covering were very much relating to her situation in HBR and for many of the companies she talked to. But I think the changes are radical. We will not see job descriptions anymore. We'll see project roles. We will, chief operating officer, a very, very important role for many years, will disappear. We'll move into chief transformation officer. I think a big change for project managers is we're not used to deliver revenues, right? And value straight quickly. We were doing projects and in 3 years, maybe there were some benefits. Now companies need revenues from projects. So we need to start seeing ourselves as, well, 30 or 40% of the revenues of the company you work or start should come from projects. And that places a big responsibility in project managers to deliver revenue fast. And we're not used to that. So I think great. I just love the next 10 years is going to be great.
Fantastic. You have another approach. Would you say that projects are their own entities? So do we expect them to become more like personas like corporations have today? Will we see that in the next decade?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I don't know. You talk a lot about ecosystems, and I said, well, ecosystems can be projects too. It's a combination of companies getting together, small players, big players, for a purpose and a cause, and why not do it on a project base on 5-10 years targets. And so I think it's a great point. I didn't see them as personas, but maybe I think things are moving. We talk about the fluid organization. So there are, you're a good point, Jade. I didn't think about that as corporations equal projects, but could be. Startups are a bit like a project based entity, right? So Thank you. I'll need to think about more on that, but definitely there's something around that for sure.
Thank you. So based on that, who do you think will we address as a project manager in the next decade? So will it be sort of an owner of personas or leader of personas? And the reason I thought about it as personas is that the value we inflict in them. Like, for example, when we care about something as human beings, we try and give our best to it. And I see that if teams give their best, then there should be sort of commitment, a personal commitment, or rather, work-based commitments, or that they really believe in the purpose or vision of their leader or project. So merging all that, I see a person basically as a project.
Yeah, I call project managers the next CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
So as a CEO of your project, which might be like an organization, or then your role, it should be looked at differently. I think project managers should see themselves as CEOs, founders, startup founders of their projects. And that means, yes, you are accountable for delivering, but also you're empowered to challenge your senior leadership, your stakeholders, and then motivate your team, engage your team, and drive that change. So definitely the CEOs of their projects. That's the way I see it.
So do you think we are going to experience a change in the structure or hierarchy in these corporations? So you're saying that project managers are to be the next CEOs of corporations or startups. So
correct.
How will we see a hierarchy in this regard? Like, do we then place project managers on top of everything? And then, what about the rest of the operations, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think there will be a bit of a split. There will be the part which is operations, which is going to be much more automated. And then project will be a bit like the business units that you have, right? Today in Agile, you also work on products, and this is the product team, and they have quite a lot of empowerment. I think we'll move also to project-based, so these are entities. And because projects will become programs as well. So you'll have a program to work on, and it's kind of a division, and that division will be maybe constant digital innovation, and you'll have projects and agiles, and so I think the evolution is flipping from operations to something a bit more transversal, which will be programs, projects, products. Definitely.
So then, based on what I've said about personas and projects being their own entities, we've talked about purpose and value. So I'd like to ask about your opinion more broadly on this. How do you think we're going to see purpose and value as in project management in the next 10 years?
Yeah, nice question. Jada, it's something that we didn't talk for many years when I started learning project management, and something that since 3-4 years I've been talking a lot in two ways. I wrote an article for HBR called The Hierarchy of Purpose, which helps in the selection and prioritization of projects. But the other more important is that we've been always heard that business case is the most important part of your project. And I've realized that, yes, it's important, but nobody gets excited about whether your project makes 10% return on investment or 15. That's not what people are looking. So I always say even more important is the purpose of your project. So I think definitely that's the driver. If your project has no purpose, people will not be engaged to work on it. And I wrote this is also in my book, but also an article in HBR, whether purpose is more important than business case. And people tend to agree, but just to give you a small tip on how to know if your project is worth it. If you are a listener and you're about to launch a project, one thing, Jada, we didn't comment, but the most engaged people in a project are volunteers. So it's you are going to launch a project and you ask through the company who wants to join, right? And people will raise. This never happens actually in companies. In companies, they say, hey, Jada, congratulations, you've been selected for this project. You start tomorrow. I don't care if you're too busy, you just start, right? And of course, your commitment and engagement will be not the same as if I say, Jada, we're going to start this project. Do you want to join? And you say, yes, I'm interested. So a very simple technique that I tell senior leaders is when you are going to launch a project, when you announce it, you talk about the purpose, ask around the organization who wants to join. And if nobody wants to join, that project is crap. Don't start it. Don't start it. You don't need to spend 3 months.
That's terrible for the creator of the idea, you know.
If nobody wants to join, if nobody raises that, you don't need 3 months of analysis to know whether it's worth it or not. Nobody believes in that. So I think either you didn't explain the purpose, either you didn't get the angle, but that's a very simple way to check if your project is worth. Who wants to join?
I also think that the angle you explain the purpose and value in a project is super important, as you just emphasized. So how do you think a creator of the idea should present the purpose? Like how can we make the team members or have volunteers engage in the project and say, okay, I want to work in this because I believe in this purpose. What should we do to have that in the workplace?
Yeah, very simple. And other simple techniques. I love simple things. Ask why 3-4 times. Ask why we're going to do this. I give you the example. I think I used it a few times. Is we're setting up a new HR system, and that's the project. And then just but that's not exciting. Who wants to work on that? But if you say why, and you say, well, because this new system brings community functionality and our employees are not very happy now working virtually, that will going to help them. And why? And then you ask, why do we need communities? Why? Because people will feel more engaged, they will feel part of the community, we lose less talent. And why do you want that? Because we're going to be a more successful company, attract more people, and so on. So an HR system, which is the project we talk, you move it into a higher purpose, which is we're going to the project to engage more or people, right? And get who doesn't want to work there? Who wants to work in a HR system? No way, please. But who wants to work in a project who's going to increase our employee engagement, happiness? Much more people. And then 2 more points, and then and then you ask the project manager, how are you going to measure that? And she told me, well, we have a survey every year, it happens in January, and our goal is to have 50% increase on employee. And you say, by when? January is when we have so in January next year, we're going to increase by 50% employee satisfaction. That's the project. You see the difference from an HR system and that's what people want to hear. That's where people will jump. That's when we drive success. So that's just very simple. I teach all the things because they're simple and yeah, in my LinkedIn courses too, very simple, but very powerful.
Fantastic. Less is more, as you just said.
Exactly.
So following up for the last question about measurement, because I realize now that we haven't talked about the measurement of project success in the next decade. How do you think we will manage the project's success in the next decade?
Well, I think one thing that we don't do very well is it's engaging your stakeholders in defining the benefits of your project. So I think this is super important. And we should do that more often. We build our business case on our assumptions and what we think. But what I say in my approach book is, why don't you ask your clients? Why don't you ask your employees? Get a group of 10 people. I made a checklist of benefits and I said, what are you expecting from this project? You get engagement from the beginning. You know what they're expecting. You're not making assumption. Most of the time it's not only about return on investment, they're looking for something else. So I think the way we measure benefits should be much more open. We need to ask for people, as stakeholders, what they expect. And then you keep them updated and you say, well, okay, we're 3 months down the project. This is how we're progressing for you. And it's such a different way to look at project success, measurements, moving out of the traditional triple constraints of budget, scope, and time. We need that, but opening up to them. And that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. So true. So Antonio, I'd like to thank you so much for these insights. I mean, I have countless food for thoughts now. I hope the audience feels the same because I have learned incredibly much from you today. So thank you so much for coming here to talk with us today.
Thank you, Jada. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I hope that we keep in touch, and people listening, just reach out and follow and contribute. There's a lot of learnings, not just from me, but people who know in mostly in LinkedIn or on my newsletter. So yeah, thank you very much.
The learning is interactive, as you just said. So in the below, we're going to leave Antonio Rodriguez's website, and we're going to leave the link of his Harvard Business Review Project Management Handbook book, which we think is absolutely incredible, and you should get one of those. And you have 20% off discount promo for the e-copy, is that right?
That's correct, for the Kindle version.
Fantastic. The code is PManagement 2021, which we will share below. And he has amazing LinkedIn learning courses, which is Project Management Reinvented for non-project managers. So it's a good one to go if you're just starting out. And also how to be an effective project sponsor. And his LinkedIn newsletter weekly shares, again, incredible insights. So you should follow that as well. And lastly, he has another course to become a strategy implementation professional with another discount code. And the discount code is PMO Impact, which we will share in the links again below. Antonio, thank you so much for this interview. We have learned incredibly a lot. So we hope to see you again in another episode of Cubicle Talks.
I love to. Thank you. Thank you, Jada.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.
Bye.